Anybody, any moment of silence? Good evening, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council of March 10th. May all please rise. We'll begin the meeting with the prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. We now please salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Council Mercia.
Here.
Council Milanazzo.
Here.
Council Rourke.
Here.
Council Samaras.
Here.
Council Belanger.
Here.
Mayor Elliott.
Here.
Council Kennedy. Council Leahy.
Here.
Council Martin.
Here.
Is 8 present.
Present. We will begin our meeting. No request for suspension. We have, under Mayor's business, we have a communication. We have, like to welcome Representative Mom, who is with us this evening. He was with us for a meeting earlier. His aide is just going to get him. But the first communication is a communication from Representative Mom. It's a discussion of legislation that he has filed regarding making the firing of a gun into a dwelling a felony. Motion, well, there's no motion. We'll just wait one moment for Representative Mom to join us. He was just here. Representative Mom, welcome to the City Council chamber. If you'd just like to go right to the podium, you are the first item on the agenda, and we have already opened the meeting. And welcome to City Council chamber. Thank you for joining us to take an opportunity to discuss the legislation that you have filed regarding making the firing of a gun into a dwelling a felony. And if you will, the floor is yours, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, the body, council. Great to meet everyone and the entire body and the citizen of Lowell, Massachusetts. First of all, when a woman sleeps in her own home and gets shot up, and when I met a lot of other people, including myself, when I feel that unsettling feeling in your stomach, when you felt unsafe, where you worry about your children's safety, there's something wrong with our city. We need to address this. Now, my legislation that I'm the lead sponsor, but I also want to acknowledge that I have the District Attorney, Mary Ryan, who is also in support, and Representative Tommy Golden, Dave Nangle, and Jim Marciero, who's also in support of my legislation. I'm here tonight to ask the council for a formal support and vote, so I will bring this to the State House to make sure that this is swiftly enacted. I want to make sure that as a citizen in Lowell, Massachusetts, lived in safety in our own home. When we don't have safety, everything falls apart. The business falls apart. People move out. That's not good. Education also falls apart as well. So there's a lot that needs to be addressed. I thank you for your attention, and I ask, through you, Mr. Mayor, the support of the entire council body and also the city manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I'm sure there'll be some questions, if you don't mind just staying at the podium. We'll start with Councilor Mercia. Here we have Councilor Samaras.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through you to our newest legislator, Representative. I just want to congratulate you publicly. I sure have done that privately, but I wanted to do it publicly. You know that your predecessor was a very efficient leader, and you have very big shoes to fill. And
Yes.
You know who we're talking about, but I commend you for this beautiful motion. We all have to work together to make our city much safer. And we do that by not only filing legislation, but making sure that it's adhered to. And we say that we have a city that is unsafe, and I say, why do we have a city that's unsafe? I believe that a part of that is it's unsafe because of the drug epidemic that we have here. So although I do support your motion 100%, everything we can do, we have to follow the law. And we can sit here as councilors and make motions and laws all day long, but if they're not adhered to and followed, a mandatory year in jail, there's a great motion, a great legislation. I don't know how it, didn't get addressed or followed, but I believe as well that the next bill that you file should be that anybody caught and convicted of selling drugs is a mandatory sentence, and we stick to that as well. It's one thing to, have drugs on you that you're taking for God knows what reason, but the people that are selling the drug, that's the problem. If nobody's selling it, nobody can acquire it. So that should be your next bill that we support. But I want to commend you for coming here, taking your time to be here. I fully support it. I'm one of 9, but it's a great idea. Thank you for coming
Thank
here.
you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Samaras and Councilor Belanger.
Thank you, Representative Mom. Thank you for this. When District Attorney Mary Ann Ryan came before us with the proposed legislation on a motion that I made, this council fully voted to support the proposal to support this bill. And now that you have filed this bill to make it an actuality, is there anything else that you see the city council doing to have this passed? Because I do believe that this is a very important piece of legislation. Because I think in the past, some people have dismissed the idea of someone shooting at a house. It's just a building, but the consideration of who's in that building has not been taken. And I think this bill is timely and very, very important. So how else do you see us, besides, we'll say, sending another letter, what else can we do to help you in this battle to win this particular point?
Councilor Samaras, thank you. Again, I'm definitely a new one at this one, and I just wanted to make sure that we have the full support, and I will personally bring back to the House to talk, whether it is to the governor and also the Speaker of the House and also all of my colleagues, to make sure that this bill passed yesterday. I cannot see anything else, but I wanted to send out a zero tolerance that is taking place in our city. We want to make sure our city is safe.
Thank you for making this stand. It's appropriate. It's very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Belanger, and then we do have the Chief of Police here, so I'd like to ask him to speak after. But Councilor Belanger?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I, too, would like to congratulate Representative Mom on his win, and we're so very proud, and you have performed outstandingly. Representative Mom, you have been sworn in no more than 60 days ago, and you are hitting the ground running on this. And I want to commend you especially for focusing on the issues, because this is an issue in our city. Okay, we had a number of incidents last year. We've had already an incident just a few weeks ago. Okay, and to have an incident like this being a misdemeanor, gunshot through somebody's window at their home, being a misdemeanor is unthinkable, but it's also reality in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But Representative Mom, thanks to your due diligence, I think that's about to change. And that's not only going to help the residents of Lowell, it's going to help the men and women in law enforcement who are out there putting it all on the line, risking everything, and to see these thugs walk right back out, right in front of their eyes. So This will send a strong message. So I want to commend Representative Malm again for staying focused on what is affecting his district, and his city. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Representative Malm, you can count on my unwavering support. Thank you very much.
Councilor.
Thank you. Any other members of the council before we ask the chief? Council Martin?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the chief a couple
Yeah,
questions,
okay.
so let's hear from him first.
Makes some sense. Chief Taylor, thank you for joining us here today, this evening, on this legislation.
Yes, Mayor, through you to the members of the City Council and the spectators. This legislation is muchly needed in the Commonwealth, and I would commend Representative Malm and the District Attorney for proposing this legislation. This will specifically address a loophole in the current statutes that we have, the criminal statutes in the state, which if the person fires at a dwelling house and doesn't hit anybody, that's a much less reduced penalty in terms of the sanctions of the court and the penalties that can be imposed than this legislation would provide for. So I think this legislation is very timely. It's certainly needed, not only in the city of Lowell, but in other communities across the Commonwealth are experiencing similar acts of violence in their cities. And this crime will make, this increased penalty will make the crime and the commensurate penalties for that crime more in line with what the actual intent of the violence is. So certainly it's much needed.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Council Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, this latest incident that was, I guess, on the news and the subject of wide reports, can you tell us, are we getting cooperation from the people that were inside the unit that was, I guess, the targets of the shooting?
Chief?
Thank you, Council. What I can tell you at this point is still a very active investigation, so I'm somewhat limited by my comments. But what I can say is that the cooperation from the people that were either witnesses or of that particular incident has been lacking. And I think it has hindered the investigation that both the District Attorney's Office and my Lowell police detectives have been undertaking. We're making progress on it. I think we definitely have some solid leads on it, but the cooperation definitely was lacking.
All right, thank you. I mean, I appreciate the chief's comments, and I appreciate his support of this legislation, and I appreciate the efforts of Representative Malm in filing it, and I will support a vote on the council to back the legislation. But I really do resent and am getting kind of tired of people portraying Lowell as this unsafe place where there's these random shootings and innocent people are victims of gunshots and attempted gunshots. I mean, there were children in that house and they're innocent victims. But we have many instances where people are targeted, they're in the drug trade, and they're not cooperative with the police. And to me, that does not reflect on the vast majority of the citizens of the city who want to go to work and do their jobs and live peaceful lives. And I think they can, for the most part, live those lives here in spite of this other activity. So I don't think that should be lost on the public. So, I'm going to support this legislation, but I continue to say that this is a safe place to live. And if you don't want to be the victim of a gunshot, stay out of the drug trade. I mean, I think it's about time we started calling things like they really are around here. And to just feed into this frenzy of that we have an unsafe city where it's the Wild West and everybody's going to be the victim of a gunshot if you don't keep your head down is just wrong. And we need to speak up and call people out who don't cooperate with the police so that the good, hardworking citizens of this city know that they can be safe where they live, where they work, and where they go to school.
Yep, I agree, Council. Further discussion on this, Council Leahy?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to echo what Councilor Martin said. I think that's a valid and very important point because there are people that are involved in certain activities and things happen like that. But I did want to mention that goes hand in hand with that is the good work that this council is doing with the manager's office of hiring the extra inspectors, going to these houses, immediately following up with the police, and making sure that if this is a problem house or problem building, that building's shut down. That building is, we're going to the extent of the law that we can and making sure that we're moving these people out also. Because when these incidents happen and we don't get cooperation, it's very unfair to the neighbors. And we are working it from a different angle. The legislation is great, and obviously I think we're all going to support it. And I want to thank Representative Mom and the Chief of Police for what he's doing. But Councilor Martin brings up a very valid point. You have a few bad apples, and they give us a black eye in the city, and it's still a great place to live and raise your family. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All good comments, and thank you to Chief Taylor and to Representative Mom for being here this evening to actually get our support on this very important legislation. My question has to do with whether or not first of all, can we get a copy of the legislation that's been filed through you, Mr. Mayor, through the manager's office, if we could get a copy, and also whether or not the mandatory gun sentence that is on the books in the Commonwealth, is that part of this zero tolerance that the representative talks about, that if you are found guilty of firing into a dwelling, an occupied dwelling, I believe, I haven't seen the legislation, that if you're found guilty, that there is that mandatory time in jail as a result of that firing. So I think that would be important, just to get a clearer picture on that. If we can get thank you very much.
So Representative Mom's assistant is handing out a copy of the legislation. We thank you for bringing that.
And then just, if I could, Mr. Mayor, just as a follow-up, something that Councilor Martin had touched upon and Councilor Leahy, relative to the owner of the building and whether or not this building was owner occupied or were there tenants there, and what follow-up are we doing in order to make sure that we're holding the property owner, if in fact there's any culpability on the part of the property owner, if we're holding the property owner accountable. So,
Mr.
again,
Manager?
I think, again, tools in our toolbox. Yes.
Yes, unlike the property on Gorham Street that we closed down because of the drug activity and the property on Lilly Avenue that because of the drug activity, we really haven't had that same level of suspicion here. We are following up, and yet we are watching it, and if we do find that, then we will close it down.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion on this? Representative
Mr.
Mom?
Thank you again very much, and I just want to, again, the minimum sentencing for this act is 5 years and max of 20 years, plus everything else that goes with it. And I just want to make sure that our men and women who are serving the community have all the tools that needs to make sure that these perpetrator and this act won't happen in our community. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and the entire body of councilor.
Thank you. When, if you could just send a copy of House Bill 990, and I'll make sure we get it out to the members of the council. So, Councilor Mercia?
So, Mr. Mayor, would we then suspend the rules to allow a resolution be drafted by the city solicitor?
I was going to entertain a motion that we refer this legislation to the law department and have the law department draft exactly a resolution to bring back to this council next week. So, motion by Council Milonazo, Council Mercia, second by Council Milonazo, to refer this legislation to the law department and refer back to this council for, require a vote, Mr. Clerk, right? Resolution. So we'll bring it back next week. Discussion on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Representative Baum, thank you for coming and providing an explanation on this legislation. And we will draft a resolution to support that bill and bring it forward next week and then have the appropriate signatures.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
you're welcome. Thank you very much. Oh, there is legislation. Did you actually get the bill? Yep. Okay. Thank you. We did get a copy of the bill, so thank you. Oops. Moving on to the city clerk's portion of the agenda, we have minutes from the city council meeting on March 3rd. Yes. Minutes of the meeting of March 3rd. We have minutes from the Audit and Clerk Oversight Subcommittee meeting of March 3rd as well. Entertain a motion to accept both of these minutes and place on file by Council Leahy, seconded by Council Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. In the opposed, that motion carries. If there's no objection, I'd like to ask the indulgence of the body to suspend the rules to bring any young gentleman from Lowell Catholic. Really wasn't a place on the agenda for this, but it's he would just like to address the council regarding a breakfast to honor Private John Francis Landry. He was a Lowell resident who died March 17th, 2007, while serving in the Army in Baghdad, Iraq. Motion to suspend the rules by Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Marcia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. McPhillips, if you please come to the podium. Thank you for joining us. I know you just want to present to the City Council a little bit about about John Francis Landry Jr. And with that, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. Mayor Elliott, members of the City Council, thank you for your time. I'm here to speak to you this evening about Private First Class John F. Landry Jr. John served with the 2nd Battalion, 12th Cavalry Regiment, and the 4th Brigade Combat Team on the 1st Cavalry Division, based at Fort Hood, Texas. John was killed in the line of duty in Baghdad on St. Patrick's Day, 2007. He was the first service member from the city of Lowell to die in combat during Operation Enduring Freedom, and he was my friend. Lowell Catholic has established the Private First Class John Landry Jr. Memorial Scholarship Fund in order to award a yearly scholarship to a current member of the Lowell Catholic Junior class who exemplifies the character and commitment to Lowell Catholic and a love of country that Landry enthusiastically shared. This St. Patrick's Day marks the 8th year of John's passing, and the 7th year Lowell Catholic has hosted a memorial breakfast in John's honor. The breakfast will be held in the Lowell Catholic Gymnasium, 530 Stevens Street. Tickets cost $25, and all the proceeds from the breakfast benefit the John Landry Scholarship Memorial Fund. Businesses can also sponsor the breakfast. Please feel free to contact Miss Roberta Barnes at Lowell Catholic with any questions or for ticket sales. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, for fitting me in this evening, and thank you, Council, for your time. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, it was Sunday, March 15th at Lowell Catholic.
Sunday, March 15th, Lowell
sir.
Catholic. What time?
9:30.
9:30. Very good.
Thank you very much for your time. I
Mr.
appreciate it.
Phillips, thank you for coming here tonight and providing us with this information, as well as putting on this breakfast for one of our own who died in combat.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you. Moving on to the next section of the agenda, we have communications from the city manager. We have motion responses A, B, and C. I know the manager has a presentation on motion response report on the debt schedule. Do we want to, any other questions on motion response A or C that we could address before we moving into this presentation? Council Samaras?
Yes, thank you. On motion C regarding utilizing civilian versus officers in the police department, I want to thank Chief Taylor for an excellent report, but I'd like to have Chief Taylor, if the city manager would allow it, to come in and make a presentation as to how many officers he had the ability to put on the street and what savings he could see down the road utilizing civilian workers as opposed to trained police officers.
Mr. Manager or Chief?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Through you to the City Council. As you can see from this response, as part of the reorganization of the police department that I undertook with my command staff in the winter and spring of last year, we took 24 police officers and reassigned them from various capacities to high-visibility uniform patrol in the neighborhoods of the city. They were specifically designed to focus on bicycle, foot, and later on in Segway patrols in the downtown area of the city. As part of that reorganization, we took 5 positions that had previously been in other assignments outside the patrol force, and we took them and put them into these uniformed patrol activities, specifically foot and bicycle patrols in the neighborhoods. The other portions of this discussion is we currently have 9 civilian personnel that really are critical to the mission of the Lowell Police Department. And as part of that, we are trying to see if possibility down the road, we may be able to take some of them, a couple of them, from grant-funded positions over to the city budget. I understand the financial constraints of the city, so that's certainly something along the lines of a wish list. But I think it would greatly contribute to the core mission of the police department and free up some other funds for some other dedicated services. What I think is important is we've identified 3 positions that are currently either used civilian or, uniformed or detective personnel in the police department, that if we can reallocate those positions to civilian personnel, that would free up 3 additional personnel to be rededicated to uniform patrol activity. One of them is a MIS position. As I'm sure most people can understand, the management information system of the police department is ever expanding. We rely more and more on the capabilities of information technology, social media, and other related activities. So we need a minimum of 3 people in that MIS unit to cover us for all of our responsibilities 24/7. Currently, I have 2 uniformed personnel that work in that unit. I would like to take one of those personnel and rededicate them to uniform patrol activity and replace that person with a civilian person that's professionally trained in the MIS field. I think that if we can do that, that will greatly increase the capabilities of that unit moving forward. In addition to that, it'll be, I think, a little better long-term fit, because if I do put a uniformed person in there, a member of the Patrol Officers Union, they can theoretically at least bid out every year, which would, literally throw potentially some disruption into the mission of that unit. So that's much better served by putting a civilian in that position. The other position that I think would be greatly advantageous to have a civilian personnel instead of a detective would be to have a civilian receptionist and victim outreach coordinator in the criminal investigation division. That person would do administrative function, but it would also be very much responsible for making those initial contacts to victims of certain property crimes in the city, to make sure that the victims of these crimes in the city get the appropriate amount of attention and get an update on their cases as it proceeds through the investigative process. Currently, those duties are being done by a detective. This would be a more efficient way to do it, and it would relieve the detectives from that initial contact and fielding those calls on a day-in and day-out basis to focus more activity and more of their resources in investigative purposes. So I think that would be advantageous. And then the third component would be, right now we have a Lowell Police Department Employee Assistance Program that is a full-time position that's currently filled by a patrol officer. That particular person is retiring very soon, and I would like to not fill that position with another patrol officer and contract with a service provider for those services. We certainly need them. They're definitely critical to the police department as we go forward, but I think we can do it with a contract out to a service provider in some capacity that would allow us then to take that person, that EAP officer, that full-time position, put it back into dedicated uniform patrol in the city without sacrificing that needed capability in the organization. So I think that highlights the 3 positions that we've been able to identify that, if given an opportunity to replace those sworn personnel with civilians, would essentially give us 3 additional police officers on the street.
Thank you, Chief. All set, Council? Okay, further discussion, questions on this particular, the other 2 motions? Seeing none, Mr. Manager, we'll go right into motion response B, report on debt schedule, impact of new high school, and feasibility study reimbursement. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the council, I'd like to call on our Chief Financial Officer, Connor Baldwin. We also have our financial consultant, Bob Healy, here to do a brief explanation of our existing debt structure in response to your motion. So, Connor, if you could address them.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the members of the City Council. The City Manager asked that I provide the Council with a brief presentation to supplement the report that was provided in this week's packet relative to Mayor Elliott's motion on the City's current outstanding debt and the tax impact of a bond issue relative to a potential new high school building. This first slide that you see before you categorizes the City's current outstanding debt, visualized using a pie chart. The general categories used are consistent with those reported to the Department of Revenue on the annual statement of indebtedness report. Those categories include municipal buildings, sewer projects, water projects, school building projects, departmental equipment, other school department debt, and a general category for all other outstanding debt. These categories are consistent with the many purposes for municipal borrowing allowed under Chapter 44, Sections 7 and 8 of the Massachusetts General Laws. As you can see, the largest portion of currently outstanding debt is sewer at $96 million, followed by municipal buildings at $51 million, school buildings at $36 million, water at $31 million, departmental equipment at $5 million, a broad other category at $5 million, and then school other at $1.5 million. The total debt outstanding in all funds, including the general fund and the enterprise funds of the city, as of June 30th, 2014, was $249,145,949. Next slide, please. This next slide displays the existing outstanding debt, net of any reimbursements we receive. The chart is projected out over the next 5 years to show the drop-off of existing debt service, but it also includes the onloading of debt that has been authorized by the council but yet to have been permanently issued. The city has approximately $111 million in authorized but unissued debt spread out over several categories, which are represented on the chart with the different color portions of the bar. Among the purposes of that authorized unissued total that I just spoke of are a $40 million wastewater system improvements bond, $22.8 million for water main, dam, treatment plant, and reservoir improvements, as well as the residential meter project. Slightly less than $11 million for bans issued in September of 2014, $21 million in outstanding school bonds, $3.3 million in energy conservation bonds, $7 million for the manager's forthcoming proposed capital, and $18.5 million for outstanding prior year capital plans that is yet to be permanently financed. Next slide, please. This slide details the projected debt service calculated out over the life of a 30-year term on a potential $55 million bond associated with a potential high school building. The total cost numbers come from the OMR Architects Lowell High School Master Plan Cost Value Options, Option 1D and Option 1E. The total debt service payments over the life of the loan would be approximately $104 million, with an annual debt service cost of approximately $3.5 million per year. Next slide, please. So the final slide details the tax impact of the $55 million bond. The tax impact of a 30-year, $55 million bond averages 45 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. If the average annual assessment is $225,000 for the average single-family home, then the total average annual impact is $99.25. Over 30 years, this would be calculated out to $2,997.50. On the commercial side, the impact averages 95 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. Average commercial industrial personal property value is not exactly a valid figure like the average single-family home due to extreme variation in value. However, using a $500,000 as a benchmark, The increase would be $475 annually, or $14,250 over 30 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Questions on the presentation from the manager on this motion? Questions? Councilman Milonazo?
I thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to either the city manager or our CFO, Connor Baldwin. Looking at the size of a city like Lowell, is $249 million in outstanding debt an exorbitant number, or is it something that you, as, administering the finances for the city, feel is a comfortable number at this point in time for the city?
It's comparable. I believe the standard is around 8%.
Mr. Baldwin?
Right. The industry standard for debt service would be anywhere from 0 to 8% of your operating expenditures. For 2015, we're right at that 8% level. So we're at the max now, and we'll be somewhere thereabouts with the amount we issue for already authorized debt that's going to be on the books very soon.
Okay. As a follow-up, if I could, Mr. Mayor, under the authorized debt, we have $21 million that's still outstanding for school building projects. And we're talking $55 million for the high school project. Is the outstanding $21 million at a different rate or a higher rate than what the proposed $55 million would be at? Or do we not know that yet, since it's been approved, but it's not yet been drawn down, as I understand it?
The outstanding but unauthorized school debt hasn't been issued, so there is no rating. We don't anticipate any loss. However, there are also projects for which there is no SBA reimbursement.
Okay.
These are school roofs, school doors, major cost items over time, but they add up.
Potentially come from this outstanding. Okay.
Just to add to Mr. Haley's point, the projected rate that we were using for the 30-year bond on the $55 million is 4.75, and that's based on our current bond rating that we have now, which could change in either direction.
Which is AA minus, is that what it is currently?
AA minus with Standard & Poor's.
Standard & Poor's, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Milonazo. Council Lay, then Council Belanger, then.
Thank you to the CFO. So when we went over these numbers and you gave us the 0 to 8% operating expenses, so for how many years does that tie us up? I know through a presentation maybe a year or two ago, I think they were saying 16 and 17 we were going to start dropping off maybe. So does this doesn't really tie our hands for future projects, right, where we have other projects that we're taking a look at, like police and fire department, stuff like that. So how long are we tied up at that 8%, would you say, at our max?
Mr. Manager?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think that if we could put back that slide with the authorized and issued in the bar charts, you'll see what has happened, and you can see that we're above the current line, which is just above the 0.8% in each of the next 5 fiscal years for projects that are on the books, voted and approved by the City Council, but not yet issued. So while the blue line will show you, yes, there is debt that's being retired, there's also debt that is being added that's already been voted. This is not even new projects other than the city manager's $7 million curb appeal capital budget that will be submitted to the City Council in the not too distant future. So we picked fiscal year 2020 because that shows the picture of where the city will be up until the year, if there were to be an approved school project, that debt would commence in fiscal year 21, and the $55 million then would be added back up, so that number will go back up above the 8%.
All right, so for now, we're on a downward, we're going down with we're retiring some debt, but if this high school were to come to fruition, the columns would climb back up, so.
Except, well, true, except we're also going up while we're going down. So that's where the other colors in that bar chart are for the various projects that are yet to be issued. The solid blue line would be if no debt were issued between now and 2020. However, all of those individual colors which indicate the purpose of the debt, whether it be sewer or water or schools or building, have to be added in there because most of that will be issued in 2016. So you can see the total debt will grow. Not the current base is declining, but overall debt grows.
Okay.
I think his question is, debt is going to continue to be added in spite of this 55 million. Is that your question, Counselor?
Yeah, and well, I was looking at the column, so I can see the whole, I'm just trying to see from here where, so the blue is existing net debt.
Correct.
And the colors on top represent debt inside the blue or on top of the blue?
On top of the blue.
On top of the blue.
These are projects
That's
that
fine.
we need to do in the upcoming years.
Right, okay, that's
So even though that blue is decreasing, we have like sewer bonds, we have
Yeah.
capital, we have other capital plans that we have to fund. So even though our sum is going down, we're adding to it at the same time to keep the city in shape. So
Okay.
the bottom line is that we're still going to be at that 8%
Yeah.
5 years from now.
Okay.
So any increase relative to the high school will have an effect on the tax rate.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilor Belanger, Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question sort of dovetails off Councilor Leahy's now. Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager now. Mr. Manager, if approved now, I know we got a ways to go in the process, and we're certainly going to respect the process, but hypothetically speaking, we do get approved. Does it affect the city's ability for other approvals and other projects, such as the judicial center or whatnot? I'd just like to know that going into it as well, if you...
Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I don't think it will have an impact on the judicial center. They're two different pools of money. But what we're saying, though, is if we added the high school to this debt service, it will have an impact on the tax rate. If you added a police station to this debt service, it would add even more impact to the tax rate. So every project that we talk about, above and beyond what we're doing right now, is going to increase the taxes for the citizens.
Thank you.
It's just a question of how much, based upon how much you're willing to borrow.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think it's understood. We'd love to see a new high school. There's no two ways about it. For our kids, it'd do wonders for our city, but can we afford it? Is the question with the other issues that will surface. And as you mentioned, Mr. Manager, police station. The police station is in far worse condition than the high school. It is deplorable, quite frankly. And, you know, the high school has issues, but it's by no means falling down. So we're going to need to prioritize in the coming months, and they'll be very revealing as the mayor has scheduled a tour of the high school for the ad hoc subcommittee, and we'll tour it and get some quality information as to the condition of the high school itself, and in the coming months will be revealing as to make an educated decision on the future of the high school. But again, something I know I sure would love to see, but can we afford it is the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just
Councilor
a quick question. The $55 million Mr. Baldwin speaks of, how did that number come about?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the $55 million was taken from the OMR architect study that was commissioned by the school department to sort of get ahead of the MSBA process. And there were two options that were highlighted, 1D and 1E, both of which had the total project cost at just under $250 million. So we projected a reimbursement rate of 79% from the SBA, and that left with the $55 million on the city share.
Okay, and then that's how you came up with the $99 a year going forward, correct?
That's correct, Counselor.
Okay, so then you can look at, for, I guess, for a brand-new high school in the city, that would cost the taxpayers $8 a month?
Yeah, somewhere thereabouts, yes.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Milonazo?
Thank you. If I could, Mr. Mayor, two questions. One has to do with how you arrive at the 8%. In your, I guess I'll call it the denominator, are we putting enterprise funds in that denominator? If you're looking at borrowing money, say, to do the improvements that we voted on for the parking garages, are the enterprise funds within that larger number?
Yes, for the total, as a metric for affordability, it includes all funds, general fund, and the enterprises.
Right, okay.
Because the enterprise fund debt is also shown in.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And then just my follow-up, really a comment about whether or not we can afford to do this. I think my colleagues would agree that we almost cannot afford not to do this, meaning that, in my opinion, as goes the school system, goes the community. And if we're looking at our property values across, especially on the residential side, in my opinion anyway, that we want to make sure that we have a very good school system in order to attract folks to buy property in the city and raise their family here. So as much as I'd love to say we're going to do this high school, we're going to do a police station, we're going to do a new central firehouse, I think, people don't move to a community because there's a nice police station or a nice firehouse. They move to a community because of the schools. So I just want to kind of reinforce that from where I sit. And as we go forward, and hopefully this month we'll hear whether or not the high school has been selected as a finalist for the state reimbursement. Because I just think it's so important to invest in our public education.
Councilor Samaras and then Councilor Mercia.
Thank you. First of all, Mr. Baldwin, could you just talk about the feasibility study, what that entails, and how that will be paid?
Mr. Baldwin?
Sure. So the feasibility study we project would be somewhere around $1.5 million, which would be reimbursed at the end of the process. So it would need to be paid by the city, which we could issue short-term notes or a ban for to pay until the end, in which case it would be reimbursed at the same rate that the school would be reimbursed by the SBA.
Correct. If we were not to build a school, that cost would be assumed by us if we did not build a school. But I also want to, support Councilor Milonazo and ask the city manager, at this particular point, where we're at the 8% and we'll be there for 5 years, we could say, well, we just can't do it. No high school, no police station, no fire station. And first of all, I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Milonazo. A city is based, a city or town, in any state, people judge it based on the school system, and we need to offer our children the best we possibly can. But Mr. Manager, looking at all of that, looking at the needs of the police station, there's no question we need a new police station, and we need a fire station. So as a community, we say we can't do it, and we sort of drift backwards. But do we want to be a progressive community? Do we want to be the best that we can be? Is it doable? Do you see it as doable, as manageable?
Mr. Manager?
Yeah, so it's doable from a management standpoint, but it's a question of the cost of doability. That's all but this presentation is not taking a stance on any one project over another. It's only saying that based upon our current debt service, this is what the cost is going to be to add to this debt service.
So basically, if we want to do this, we have to sell it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Mercia?
Well, I hear the term, we can't afford not to build a new high school. So I must have missed something out of the context here. Where did we propose building this new school? Because I don't quite remember hearing that. Is there a plan where to put it?
Well, Council, the OMR study comes up with some recommendations, and one is an alternative location, which is not this amount. That's $300 million. This proposal of the additional money is at the existing site.
At the existing site?
Correct.
and it is up to a committee to decide if we're even going to be allowed to build a new school or to refurbish that which we already have, right?
Correct. Mr. Manager?
Yes, that's what the feasibility study will determine, as far as the costs and the ability to do it. Yeah.
Council Lay, can you take the chair, please?
Mayor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And thank you, Mr. Manager, Mr. Baldwin, for Mr. Healy preparing this information. I filed this motion essentially to generate discussion that's taken place right now. There has been discussion, there have been votes taken by this council as well as the school committee to submit application to Mass School Building Authority. And upward, in the next couple of weeks, the committee will make a decision whether we have moved on and have been approved to proceed to the second round. And that second round would be to proceed with the feasibility study of a new high school. So I wanted to bring forward to the council and to the school committee and the people at home, more importantly, what the net effect would be. $99 a year increase at a minimum, and just for residential for each home. And Mr. Baldwin, I guess you used 500,000 as the average commercial property, and I know that's a very difficult figure. But what was that? What was the net effect on an annual basis for commercial and industrial property?
On the commercial side?
Correct.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair. The increase would be $475 annually, or over a 30-year term would be $14,250.
$250, right. So I think it's important, and that, I guess my question is, these numbers, while that presumes we do nothing else. We don't pave streets, that is just on top of what our existing debt would be. Is that correct?
Good job.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, so the impact on taxes is just on the $55 million bond, without anything else. It's just the impact of that bond, the debt service on the general fund. So
my concern and caution in moving forward on this cost, maybe it's, it can be seen as $8 a month, and we cannot afford not to do that. But this presumes nothing else. And what I want to bring forward to the council is, moving forward, believe it or not, the priority on the Lowell school system, not the end of this year, but in 2 years, is the need for additional classroom space at 3 of our middle schools, upwards of a cost of around $650,000 per year. So there's a need within the next, once this bubble hits the 5th grade, our middle schools, every year there's going to be a need for 6 additional classrooms at 3 schools, the Daly, the McAuliffe, and the Wang. So, the Robinson. So our 3 middle schools, and that's, that money has to be considered, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We're going to need to add classrooms, presumably modular classrooms. So even before we get to this high school, we're looking at a significant investment that needs to be addressed even before. So there are some costs that are not factored in, that it's not just this investment. And I'm not saying one way or the other. I just think we need to be cautious to see what else can we do. And you're saying at the very minimum, we do nothing, there's an automatic increase of over $100 a year for residential homeowners, and then $475 for commercial, using that particular number. That also doesn't include any land acquisition costs that's not reimbursed, correct? Okay. All right, so that's all I wanted to show. Council Belanger's right. I did schedule a meeting of this ad hoc subcommittee of both the school committee and city council to take a tour of the high school and see we know that it does need some work in the gymnasium for sure, needs work some in the science labs, the HVAC, that it does need repairs. And so that tour will take place this coming Friday, knowing that this SBA decision will be coming soon, and we'll have to make a decision whether we want to spend, is it the feasibility study is how much, Mr. Manager?
1.5, and the next meeting of the SBAB is March 25th.
So having this information, knowing there's a subcommittee meeting set, where just, again, providing all the information to people at home as well as to members of the council and school committee as to, I'm just trying to keep everybody abreast of what's taking place. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So I appreciate the information and the presentation. So as I understand it, in today's budget, $55 million of new debt would require approximately $100 annually on the average tax bill, right? But we don't know where we're going to be. As Mayor Elliott says, we don't know what other projects there's going to be, but there's no revenue growth factored into any of this either, right? There's no new growth for just new growth, right? Tax revenue. There's no state aid growth factored in, right? So today's figures, that's the amount, but we don't know by a long shot yet. I mean, I understand there's going to be other needs that come along too, but there's potential for some revenue growth in the budget too, right? Okay, thank you.
Councilor Samaras?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. No, I want to thank Mayor Elliott for this motion. I mean, this motion is starting, we'll say, a hard conversation. This is not going to be an easy conversation to do what we have to do. When we think about the school, I mean, the MSBA could come in and say, we're just going to authorize some rebuilding, we'll say, fix-up type projects. And it might be quite a smaller amount of money. But the issue is, if we don't discuss these things at this particular point, if we don't look at what this city can do and what we want to see for this city, I think discussions like this are worthwhile. I think at first blush, they're somewhat frightening to people. They just look at the taxes going up. But as Councilor Martin just stated, we're not talking about growth in the city. There's a lot of issues that have to be brought to the table. But I think it is good to know what the potential costs could be, but also it's smart for us to think about where do we want the city to be 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. I just wanted to make one comment too, so we'll switch.
Thank you, Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. Through you to the manager. So, as Councilor Martin brought up, this is like a black and white, I guess, look at debt service, but there could be some potential new revenues that will factor into this and gives us a little bit of relief, say, but this is a good way to start and take a good look at it and realize what the implications may be, but there is still some it could be a brighter picture, I guess.
Just consider this a snapshot of where we sit today.
Yeah.
And this is what the impact would have today. What we can't predict new growth in the future or state aid, but just think of this as a snapshot of where we are today and what the impact on the taxes would be.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion? Entertain a motion to accept all motion responses as a report of progress and placed on file by Council Belanger, seconded by Council Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next section of the agenda. We have communication from the city manager. We have a request for out-of-state travel from the Lowell Police Department. From the superintendent to the manager, I respectfully request your permission to send one member of the Lowell Police Department to John E. Reed and Associates Interview and Interrogation Techniques in Nashua, New Hampshire. This seminar will feature 3 primary topics: behavioral system analysis, behavior analysis interview, and read 9 steps of interrogation. The cost of this travel will come from the training account. Registration fee, $420. Motion to approve by Councilor Leahy, seconded by Councilor Martin. Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy. Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
That's 8.
Yeas, motion carries. Moving on to the next section of the agenda, we have votes from the city manager. We have a vote for a license agreement for 24 Market Street, overhanging sign, Mandarin Asian Bistro. Entertain a motion to waive the full reading by Council Mercia, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. We'll waive the full reading, second reading. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, in-city council is a vote authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with Lucky Lantern Incorporated, doing business as Mandarin Asian Bistro, to encroach upon City of Lowell property at 24 Market Street, Lowell, Massachusetts. Motion to approve by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Samaras. Discussion? Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy. Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
That's 8 yeas.
Yeas, motion carries. Next section of the agenda, we have reports from the subcommittee. We have a personnel subcommittee this evening, March 10th, 2015. Chair recognizes the chairman, Chairman Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Personnel Subcommittee had the hearing tonight at 5:30. It was attended by myself, Subcommittee Member Councilor Samaras, as well as Councilor Milonazo, Councilors Mercia. We had Mary Callery from Human Resources Department. We had the city manager on hand, the city auditor, and the city solicitor. And the discussion was amendments to the ordinance of Code of Ordinances on Chapter 56 pertaining to sick time and vacation time. And the manager briefed us on some changes that took place a year ago as he renegotiated last fiscal year, and explained that he's trying to convert city employees to convert to a bi-weekly pay period schedule, and is everybody just on board but the school department. But he is in ongoing conversations there, and hopefully we're able to convince the school department to convert to bi-weekly pay, because it's a lot less as far as auditing. It's cost savings involved, so hopefully the manager makes good progress there. He also is reducing sick leave from 15 to 12 days, and adding one personal day after Friday after Thanksgiving. He is capping the sick leave buyback time to $20,000. So some changes going on that the manager's working very hard negotiating, and the subcommittee stressed that, we value non-union employees as much as we value union employees here in the city of Lowell, and they're very deserving as well. So we made a motion to refer these. Council Mercia had some additions to what was discussed, and it was referred to the law department for amendment change. It's going to be back to the council in a couple of weeks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Entertain a motion as a report of progress and place on file by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Samaras. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries. No other subcommittee reports. Scheduled subcommittees. Councilor Leahy.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to report, we had a discussion today. There was a motion by Councilor Rourke on flood with a report for, I forget exactly the motion. It was to do with the spring thaw, and it was referred to the subcommittee on
Flood issues, yeah.
Flood issues, and that will go to neighborhood subcommittee and is scheduled for the April 14th. So just to let everybody know, it's going from the flood subcommittee to neighborhood, and there'll be a presentation at that time.
Okay, does the council want to vote on that?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, we need to.
Council Milonazo?
Just by way of update, the Cultural Subcommittee is meeting on March 24th.
Oh, okay, so on the flood, so the,
Sorry.
it's, you know, that's.
Well, I didn't
it's
know.
fine.
Do we need to
So,
vote on that?
Well, I guess technically we do, but I understood that the flood subcommittee is not going to entertain your motion, it's going to be the neighborhood subcommittee?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so, that's, I'm sure the body is
All
fine
those
with
in
it.
favor?
All those in favor. Motion to refer Councilor Rourke's motion on flood issues to the neighborhood subcommittee by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Thank you for letting us know that. When is that meeting, Councilor?
April 14th,
April 14th.
Tuesday at 5, Mr. Clerk, 5.
5:30, I believe.
5:30, and we'll reach out to the neighborhood to make sure. I'm sure they'll know about it. And I'm sorry, Council Milonazo, your subcommittee?
My apologies, I didn't mean to
No.
preempt the neighborhood subcommittee. Yes, we're having a cultural subcommittee meeting on the 24th to follow up on your motion, Mayor Elliott, dealing with the Spring Art Festival. So
Oh,
that's
great,
on the
very good.
24th at 5:30.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, moving on from subcommittee reports. Next section of the agenda. We have petitions. We have 2 claims for property damage. Entertain a motion to refer both of those claims to the Law Department by Council Mercia, second by Council Milonazo. On that motion, Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Usually, we don't discuss or make any recommendations or anything in regards to claims. They just get referred to the solicitor's office. But one of those claims was a little bit concerning to me with the light post that was unstable and fell and damaged property. I just would like to know, through you to the city manager, if we could check the surrounding poles in that vicinity to make sure it doesn't happen again, or is there something going on in that area? So if we could do that, thank you.
Further discussion on the claims? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion passes. Next motion of the evening, we have a miscellaneous petition. Carmen Rivera requests 1 handicap parking sign at 127th 6th Street. Motion to refer this to the traffic engineer for a report and recommendation by Council Belanger, seconded by Council Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Next issue of the evening, we have another miscellaneous petition. Jose Rodriguez requests 1 handicap parking spot at 12 C Street. Further discussion, motion to refer this to the traffic engineer as well for a report and recommendation by Council Martin, second by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion passes. Next motion, next section of the agenda, we have council motions. We have a motion by Council Martin. Request Division of Planning and Development provide a report as to the status of 2 for Lowell loans and possible funding sources to expand the program. Second by Councilor Samaras. Council Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think most of us are familiar with this program, something that I had proposed many years ago and the council has supported. Really a down payment assistance program for people that own or occupy 2, 3, or 4 family houses. Earlier this evening, even in the discussion about, problem properties, we said, the first question always is this an absentee landlord? Is this an owner occupant? This program was pretty successful in encouraging owner occupancy of multifamily units, and we had a lot of success. Mr. Manager, I haven't asked for this report since you've been here, but DPD has reported on it in the past. I think at least the time of last report, despite widespread foreclosures, I think we only had 1 loan in default. There has to be over at least 100 loans now made under this program. So I'm really just trying to see, and it's not that it's been discontinued, but given the real estate market in the last few years, I think it's been used less than it otherwise could have been. And I think as the real estate market is recovering here, there may be more opportunity for some of these loans. But I think a good first step is to just gather the data, because I think we have a good story to tell, And I think with the data assembled, the most recent data, we may open ourselves up to new funding sources. So I think this is, one way we have to reduce problem properties. But there's no better person to watch over the property than the owner who lives downstairs or upstairs. So again, it's been successful, and I think we should just gather the data, and that would be a good first step to see what other funding opportunities there may be out there to sort of reinvigorate or expand the program.
Thank you, Council. Councilor Belanger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sounds like a very interesting program. I'm not too, being a freshman council, I'm not too inclined on the issue, but it sounds very good. And what I agree wholeheartedly with is that owner-occupied, in my opinion, makes all the difference in the world. So something well worth exploring and learning more about, for sure. I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. For Council Malinazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a good motion. I would just encourage the administration, when they're doing their research, to look at the Lowell Development and Financial Corporation, and then the Mill City Community Investment Corporation that has offices here in Lowell on Merrimack Street and then in Lawrence as well. So I would certainly look at both the LDFC and the MCCI as possible additional funding sources. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed? Motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Council Belanger. Request City Manager update Council regarding new synthetic drug ordinance. Second by Council Leahy. Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know with the council approved months ago a synthetic drug ordinance, and Commissioner Singleton was in last week and briefed the council on the dangers and severity of this. I guess it could be included as a gateway. The very, very toxic hard drugs that are available over the counter. And I just like to know how, the health department and the city are reaching out to, retail merchants, to variety stores as to combat the sale of these bath salts included, or I don't know what form they come in these days, but how we're going to combat the sale of these things and how we're going to go about it. So I'd like to know much more, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion on this motion? Council Leahy.
Thank you. Do we, through you to the manager, do we still have, are there still grants available for, I guess what you might call street workers that go out and try to purchase these things, I guess in cooperation with police department to, so is that still ongoing also?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No.
Through you, thank you. Yes, and we received a grant from Lowell General Hospital to implement this synthetic drug ordinance. I think it might be a good idea to refer it to the drug subcommittee, and we can give it's great timing because we're ready to roll out the program in full, and we could give a presentation to that subcommittee about how we're rolling out that program to deal with these synthetic drugs. So it's actually pretty good timing for that if you wanted to have a nice presentation from Mr. Singleton and the rest of the administration relative to how we're going to roll that out.
Thank you. Who would make that motion? You? Okay, so I'll put that in the form of motion.
Second it.
Second by Council Belanger.
Council, you want to change
I'll just run the meeting from here.
All those in
Can I have
favor,
the
motion by
gavel?
Council Leahy, seconded by Council Belanger. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed? Motion passes. Next motion of the evening, Council Leahy. Council Samaras request City Manager have Parks and Recreation Commissioner Tom Bellegarde report as to what will be needed to have area parks ready for youth activities. Second by Council Rourke. Council Samaras.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We all know that Commissioner Tom Bellegarde does a great job, and he does it usually on a shoestring. But this has been one of the worst winters on record. And in fact, the Lowell Sun showed a picture, I believe it was Calvary Park, where some volunteers were cleaning the snow off the fields. I'd like to see a report to understand what he will need to open up the parks in a timely fashion for our youth programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. The opposed, motion carries. Next motion by Council Leahy and Council O'Rourke request City Manager provide quarterly reports with input from Health and Fire Department regarding drug overdoses in the city. No second necessary. Gentlemen?
Council Leahy's night.
Council Leahy, yep.
Thank you.
Council Leahy, you want the chair again?
Running it from here. Yes, I'd like to follow up on last week's motion, the work that you've been doing, Mayor, and the work that we've been doing on this issue. So I thought a quarterly report would be helpful. Keep it in the chambers for discussion every quarter, and I neglected to put on there, I don't know if we want to have input from the police department, but I know the fire department wanted to have some input along with the report that Mr. Singleton gave last week. Thank you.
Quick, Mr. Mayor, yeah, thank you very much. It's a good idea by Council Leahy, and I like actually last week after we had a discussion, it was referred to the substance abuse subcommittee, so something like that I think can be done going forward. Discussion is always good in this area, and hopefully more action can be done as well, so thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Having no further business before the council, I will just announce there is we mentioned it earlier, there is a school building construction ad hoc subcommittee at 4:15 this Friday, and it is going to be held at the high school. Also just want to remind members of the council, we are still looking for one more individual to participate in the human dog sled competition. Rita is not pulling this year. She'll be in the sled.
For it, too.
And she practiced for it, but she'll be undergoing some knee surgery soon. So with that, entertain a motion to, Council Leahy?
I'm sorry, can I just make one quick comment? I should have brought this under management portion, but I did want to say that the DPW through the manager's office, you cleared out Father Morissette Boulevard all the way up. So I think that's great with Winterfest and the hockey games going on at Lowell. We needed that extra space, so I wasn't sure we were going to get that all done, but they did. So I wanted to say thank you. That's going to come in helpful this weekend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Council Leahy?
No, I think that's it. Make
Entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by Council Leahy, seconded by Council Mercier. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. This meeting stands adjourned.